They paraded her through the alien capital in chains of black steel, her crown shattered, her throne taken. To the conquerors, she was a trophy, the last ruler of a fallen human world. But in the shadows of her prison, she begins to weave a plan that will turn her captivity into a weapon, and her captor into an unwitting ally. The rain over Corinth fell black that night, carrying the soot of burning cities. From the high steps of the shattered palace, Queen Elenia could see her capital reduced to embers, towers split in half by orbital strikes, the great bridges crumbled into the river like broken ribs. The Draveth Dominion had come in force, ships blotting out the sky, their reptilian banners flapping in the oily wind. She had fought until the last barricade fell, refusing to flee even when her ministers begged her. A queen did not run. Now she stood in chains of black steel, the cold weight cutting into her wrists. Around her, the alien high guard formed a wall of scaled armor, their eyes glinting yellow in the torchlight. At their center was Lord Varith, the Draveth warlord who had taken her city in 3 days. His smile was nothing but teeth. They marched her through the ruined streets, past the hollow-eyed survivors who dared not speak. Every step was a humiliation, not for herself, but for her people, forced to watch their sovereign paraded like spoils. In the alien capital, the High Council awaited in the Hall of Blades, its ceiling lost in shadows. The Draveth nobles, their scaled throats adorned with chains of gold, regarded her as one might a rare beast brought from the hunt. "You ruled with pride," Lord Varith said, his voice a deep, cold hiss. "Now you will serve as a lesson. The Queen of Corinth will live, but only as a prisoner in Varkes. Your crown will hang in the Hall of Conquest, and your chains will never break." Elenia met his gaze with flinching. "Chains rust," she said. Her words stirred a murmur through the chamber, but Varith only laughed. The sentence was passed. That night, under a moon swallowed by ash, she was loaded into a transport bound for Varkes, the most secure prison in the Dominion. The fortress was a jagged black monolith rising from a poisoned sea, its walls humming with force fields. No one had ever escaped. As the gates sealed behind her, Elenia knew the Dominion believed they had caged her spirit, but chains could be used for more than binding. In the dark, she began to imagine how they could be turned into weapons. Varkes was not merely a prison, it was a monument to despair. Its walls were carved from volcanic stone, blackened by centuries of storms, ringed by spires of electrified steel that clawed at the poisoned skies. The sea that surrounded it hissed with acid, eating away at the bones of dead leviathans that drifted too close. Queen Elenia was thrown into the inner keep, a cell built for political trophies. The bars were forged from Draveth war steel, each link of the chain at her ankles etched with the sigils of her conquerors. Still, she stood tall when her jailer arrived. Commander Rax entered without ceremony, a towering Draveth with a jagged scar running from his jaw to his throat, the mark of a duel he had survived against his own kin. His armor was stripped of ornament, practical and battle-worn. Unlike the others, his eyes didn't gleam with cruelty. They were sharp, calculating. "I am told you are dangerous," he said, his voice low and rough. Elenia allowed herself a faint smile. "Only to my enemies." Rax studied her for a long moment, then stepped closer, the air between them heavy with the scent of scorched metal and the distant sea. "The High Lords value you alive. That makes you leverage, for now." "For now," she repeated, testing the words. In the days that followed, Rax became her warden, her escort to the ration halls, her silent shadow in the fortress corridors. He never spoke unnecessarily, but she learned to read the small fractures in his loyalty, the way his jaw tightened at the mention of the High Council, the flicker of something unreadable when he looked at the prisoners worked to death in the mines. She began to plant seeds. A remark here about the Council's greed, a quiet observation about how the Dominion bled its soldiers dry while the High Lords feasted. She gave him just enough to think she might know something valuable. One evening, as the storms battered the walls, she made her move. "Commander," she said, stepping to the bars, "if war comes to the Dominion, and it will, you will need more than chains to survive." Rax tilted his head, the scar on his throat catching the torchlight. "And you're offering what?" "A bargain," Elenia said softly. "My freedom for your future." He didn't answer, but he didn't walk away. The first signs of rebellion came as whispers carried through the cell blocks. A Dravath warlord assassinated on the homeworld, entire fleets refusing the High Council's summons. In Varkes, the guards grew restless, their patrols tighter, their tempers shorter. Alenia watched the cracks form in the Dominion's armor. She knew the moment to strike was coming. It began during the season of storms. Lightning split the skies for days, turning the poisoned sea into a boiling cauldron. On the third night, the fortress shook under a distant impact. The alarms howled, red light flooding the corridors. Rax appeared at her cell, drenched from the rain. He unlocked the door with a single command to the locks. "The council is fractured. Half the garrison has turned. If you stay, you'll die in a cell. If you leave, you fight." Her chains fell to the floor with a heavy clang. "I fight." The corridors were chaos. Dravath soldiers turning on one another, prisoners flooding the halls in a riot of desperation. Rax shoved a scavenged blade into her hands. "Stay close." They fought their way through the fortress. Twice, assassins from rival factions came for Rax, and twice Alenia's blade found their throats before they could strike. Every kill tightened the strange bond between them. No longer jailer and prisoner, but warriors bound by survival. When they reached the outer walls, a siege beast, a massive, six-limbed predator clad in spiked armor, was tearing through the gates. The rebel faction's banners streamed behind it. Acid rain stung Alenia's skin as she and Rax took position at the battlements. "They won't take me alive," she said. "They won't take you at all," Rax replied, and together they rained fire and steel down upon the attackers. By dawn, Varkes was in ruins. The loyalists were dead or fled, the rebels scattered into the wastes. Amid the smoking wreckage, Rax looked to Alenia. "You're free. Where will you go?" She wiped the blood from her blade, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Home, and I will not go alone." Rax didn't hesitate. "Then I go with you." They travelled through war-ravaged space aboard a stolen Dravath cruiser, its hull still scarred from the siege of Varkes. Alenia stood at the viewport, watching the stars blur into streaks of light, every jump bringing her closer to Corith, the home she had lost and the throne she meant to reclaim. Word of her survival spread faster than the ship could fly. Human resistance cells across the sector lit their beacons in answer to her call. By the time the cruiser emerged in Corith's orbit, a fleet of mismatched rebel vessels had gathered. Freighters refitted with cannons, mining barges armoured with scavenged plating, and a handful of stolen Dravath warships crewed by Defi. Ectors. The Dominion sent their flagship to crush them, a leviathan of black steel bristling with plasma batteries. From its bridge, Lord Vaerith himself commanded the assault, certain he would end the Queen in chains once and for all. Alenia took the command dais beside Rax. "Break their formation," she ordered. "Cut the head from the serpent." The battle lit the skies of Corith. Fighters darted between the flagship's guns, drawing fire while the rebel fleet closed in. Rax led the boarding party, his plasma blade cleaving through Dravath elites. Alenia followed in his wake, her sword flashing with every step toward the bridge. When she reached Vaerith, he was waiting, crown of bone upon his scaled brow. "You should have stayed in your cage," he hissed. "I've brought the cage to you," she replied, and drove her blade through his heart. The flagship's fall broke the Dominion's hold on Corith. The surviving Dravath fled into the void, leaving the humans to reclaim their world. In the great hall of the restored palace, Alenia stood before her people once more, not in chains, but in armor forged from the steel of her prison. Rax stood at her side, his scarred hand resting on the hilt of his blade. "You were their prisoner," he said quietly. "Now you are their queen." She looked out over the gathered rebels, the banners of the Dominion burning in the square beyond. "No," she said. "Now we are free, and the galaxy will learn what it means when humans take back what was stolen."